Hey there, Nopenguin here, and today we are going to be finding out what the best hand traps are for this upcoming format post the December ban list. As you know, the ban list was crazy, and we got a lot of things we got to go through, so let's start right now. This is the Nopenguin December 2025 hand trap tier list. Let's go! I think to start us off, I think we need to do the obvious picks. Clearly, Ash Blossom is still pretty much the best hand trap. Until they unban Maxi again, Ash is going to keep that position until the end of time. It stops any kind of ad your opponent wants to do from deck. It can negate the one branded fusion. It does so much against so many different archetypes, especially in the upcoming format. Now another obvious one, Shifter. Obviously this is for if your deck is compatible with Shifter. There are just some decks that cannot play Shifter, and that's fine. But if your deck has the capability to play Shifter, you need to be playing this card. Because post this upcoming ban list, I'm thinking Tier is going to make yet another comeback, because god, that deck will not die unless you just ban everything in it. And Lord knows we've tried. Not to mention with all those Lightsworn decks, I think this is just a very strong hand trap to keep in mind coming into the new year. On the other end of the spectrum, we could put Psycho Reader in Cope. With the decks that are going to be playable this format, I just don't see any reason why you would even want to use any of your side deck to have this card in there. It's frankly just not that good of a card right now. Next up, I want to bundle a couple of cards here together, because I think Orcus is going to be a surprisingly decent deck in the coming season. But I don't see it being top tier, so I think I'm going to be putting Lancia and Chaos Hunter both in borderline. Of course, this will stop the opponent from being able to banish anything, which basically stops a lot of the Orcus plays, but I still think it's worthy to be keeping it in mind, because even though the Orcus is a 7-year-old deck, it is still surprisingly competent, though not to the extent of some of our top contenders. I think Konami's going to have to push it a little further for it to get back to its former glory. Instead of these two, I would actually recommend we go more into the DD Crow / Bestial side of things. Of course, we can't rely on Magnum much anymore, but DD Crow is still just as strong for stopping those graveyard-centric plays. And because DD Crow handles a wider range of decks, I think it's a little bit better than the ones that just stop the one specific deck. For similar reason, I'm actually also going to be putting Ghost Bell in the really good tier. Because on top of addressing a lot of the decks that need the graveyard, it also does something if we're playing against the Runic matchup. People have been complaining for years that we have not banned Fountain, but it's still kicking, so it is still a deck that you probably will see it splashed into many different engines. It's just going to keep living on as long as Fountain does. Sticking on the graveyard theme, I think we are going to put Skullmeister into borderline, because unlike the other ones above it, it's a little bit more situational. Yes, it can negate something in the graveyard, but with just how Yu-Gi-Oh! Are and how the decks activate their effects in the graveyard, they likely don't do it in just one, they end up chaining it, which makes Skullmeister a lot harder to hit the things you really do want to hit. While as opposed DD Crow can just snatch that card right from the graveyard regardless of what chain link it's being activated in. Phantasme is Cope, I'm sorry. If there was a couple formats ago when we were doing a lot more link spamming, I could easily see Phantasme being its thing, but really this is not the format for Phantasme to really shine. The next card I want to talk about is actually Gamma, and I believe this is a must play. There are a lot of decks that really are centered around getting certain normal summon effects off, but those decks are able to recover if you Veiler or Ash or otherwise negate the effect. Gamma negates and destroys it, which gets the material off the field, prevents them from going into their Link 1 plays or their extension plays, or really just continuing off of that advantage of having that monster on the field. Especially with Zupal still around here, hitting their Rapier or Thoroughbred is just going to completely end their turn, as opposed to if you just Ash it and they can just continue from there. Unfortunately, I can't really say the same for Ghost Ogre. Ghost Ogre I would still say is really good, but not a must play. I just really can't justify putting this higher, because the destruction is really good, but you really want the negate on top of that as well. Speaking of, we are going to be putting our Orange Light into borderline. There aren't a lot of decks that can really handle using the Orange Light, so unlike Gamma, which can pretty much go into any deck, this is a bit more borderline. You know, Shifter is also in the must play, even though only some decks can do it, but it's such a absolutely catastrophic card against the right archetype. Orange Light is just a really good card if you're able to get it off, but it is not something you're going to center your gameplay around. I'm also going to be putting Infib in the really good tier. Again, effect negation is really good right now, but because it doesn't actually destroy the card that it negates, I really wouldn't call it a must play. Similarly to Valor, they pretty much have the exact same problem. These are cards you are absolutely going to be seeing in main decks all the time. They are just very generic, very easy, very versatile cards. Just in this upcoming meta, I mean, Steam Cloakers still have not been hit. Not to mention Labyrinth is still going around, which doesn't really care for these as much. Though I do think they will still be good against the Fire Kings that are still running around. Moving it into Sideworthy, we are coming into Droll. Now, Droll is an absolutely dominant force in the right deck, but against the wrong deck, this is literally just a dead card. And with what I believe the top decks are going to be this coming format, I really don't see Droll being a mainstay in the main deck. Coming up into Borderline, I am going to go with Spell Aggregator. There are a lot of really good blowout spells right now. Between Branded Fusion, the remaining Diabell Star stuff, Barrage, there's just so many spells that you really want to negate if possible, and of course only having the one Ash really hurts the ability to be able to have it consistently, so having a playset of aggregators in your deck is quite good. Of course there are a lot of decks that really don't care for that, again the aforementioned Labyrinth, but personally I feel like this belongs in the main board, not the sideboard. Speaking of the sideboard, we have Nib. We are just in a format where we are not doing a whole lot of special summoning. Of course, there are certain decks that absolutely do, but the majority of the decks right now are summoning a lot less because each summon is just doing so much now that you really don't need to get to 5 summons. But of course, we do still have our Wombo Combo decks by deck of choice, but it's absolutely a side pick. Speaking of Token Collector, I almost want to throw this into Borderline, but I think I'm going to put it in Sideworthy still because really, the best deck right now is using tokens. Steam Cloakers, we all know it, we all hate it, but Konami didn't hit it. I know it's new, but still, it's very annoying how freaking polarizing this deck is, but it's not quite a tier 0 deck. It's definitely the best deck of the format right now, which is, again, something that I would maybe suggest main decking, but against literally every other deck in the format, it does nothing. So I really can't say that you should be maining this. No material isn't cope, I'm sorry. I swear, if this card didn't say that the monster had to be special summoned, if it was just your opponent summons a monster, this card would be amazing, but the fact that it's his special summon really hurts this card because a lot of cards get their big blowout cards, big play starters by normal summoning a monster. And in that situation, this really isn't doing much. Finally, let's bang out the Ghost Girls. Cherries, cope. It's basically always going to be in cope tier, because unless you were building a deck that literally has nothing but the rest of the format in your extra deck, you're never going to be able to hit for the exact right thing. Not to mention a lot of the decks either don't rely on the extra deck or have multiple cards in the extra deck that if you got rid of one of them, they could just pivot to the other. So it's really not that good. Ghost Card and Destined Fate I'm also going to be putting in Sideworthy, similarly for the same reasons of Droll and Lockbird. They have a lot of the same applications, and this format I'm just not seeing her effect doing much. Null Nun goes into the cope tier, which is really sad because I had that really big stint of playability about a year ago when Arrow Mages were top tier, but since that deck got banned, it's fallen off so hard. And finally, Ghost Mourner, we're putting it into the really good tier. I kind of forgot to lump it in with the other effect negators, but so be it. This is what I think the best hand traps for the December 2025 format is going to be. And if you think I'm wrong, please let me know in the comments. I am super open to your guys' feedback. I've definitely made some mistakes in the past, but I'm feeling really good about my placements here today. This ban list has been crazy, so expect a lot of content from me for that, but until then, you know the drill. Like if you like, subscribe if you want to see more. I am Nopenguin, the Time Traveler, signing out.